Hello again, and welcome back to the layout. This video is going to be the first video of a three-part series I'm calling Setting the Scene. This series will cover three main elements of scenery application I'm using for this scene, and it will cover how I ballast my track, how I use tile grout for the dirt base, and how I apply static grass successfully. Within each video, I'm going to break down my processes step by step, show tools and materials used, and explain my reasoning why I do my scenery this way. After I've completed this three-part series, I'm going to follow it up with a fourth video in the form of a layout update. And I'm doing it this way because these three initial videos are more how-to style videos, and it just shows a small sample of the methods I use for scenery. So the layout update will be kind of a final overview of all these methods coming together for how I'm crafting this scene. So let's get started with the topic of the first video. This first video is going to cover one of my favorite parts of scenery, which is ballasting. And it's going to cover how I ballast my track, how I glue my track, and then how I weather my track at the end. And I know to some, ballasting can seem boring or tedious, and tedious it sure is, but I do enjoy the monotony of it, and personally, I think having really good ballast makes the trains pop as they travel over it, and just in general makes a layout look really good. My ballast of choice is from Arizona Rock and Mineral, and I'm using their Empire Builder blend. For the gluing process, I use Liquitex Matte Medium, and I create a 50-50 mixture with water. The gluing process will be covered later in this video. Now, let's get to applying the ballast. What I do first is dump the ballast on the track. I try and dump enough to get good coverage, but not too much where it becomes a mess. Using a soft bristle brush, I start brushing the ballast into place. I pour a lot out so it'll brush into place easier on the sides of the track. I need plenty of ballast because my track sits on 2 layers of cork to get that busy Class 1 mainline look. From here on, I take multiple passes until the ballast is brushed into place. I make sure it gets in between the ties and no loose ballast is sitting on the track or along the sides of the rails. I also brush the base of the ballast, cleaning it up to give it a uniformed look. Busy Class 1 mainlines have well-regulated ballast, especially on Logan Hill. I'm taking my time, brushing it into place, making sure the ballast looks close to the prototype. Sometimes I'll find bigger pieces that somehow made it into the package. I pick them out and use them to help fill in space where the ballast will go. I'm not sure if this is common with Arizona Rock and Minerals ballast. Let me know in the comments if you've had the same experience. Now that all of the ballast has been put down, we can move on to the next step, gluing the ballast. Using the 50-50 water glue mixture, I liberally apply it over the ballast. The idea is to completely soak the ballast so it's solid once it dries. I'm probably being more careful than I need to be, but you're gluing correctly if it looks like a milky mess. Some people apply isopropyl alcohol before the glue, creating a 2-step process. The way I attempted ballasting was to add the alcohol to the glue mixture, making this a 1-step process. Not that I wanted to rush through this part of the process, I just wanted to find an efficient way that gives me good results. It's common practice, but for those who are wondering, the isopropyl alcohol relieves the surface tension to the water in the mixture, making it flow better into the ballast and not running off the top. You can tell by how the glue capillaries into the ballast. Just like spreading the ballast, properly gluing it takes time, so patience is key. My approach is to put on a podcast or listen to music and glue away. I've finished applying the glue, now we wait for it to dry. It can take up to 48 hours, maybe even more, to be completely dry and solid. Speeding up time, the ballast has fully dried and is completely solid. Something I didn't expect to happen is how much darker the ballast dried compared to its color right out of the bag. You can see in this direct comparison. It made the ties a lot darker as well. I think the dust from brushing the ballast into place must have dried darker, kind of making the ballast and the ties all one color. But overall, I'm happy with the outcome. It's solid, looks like uniform mainline ballast, and still has a good color, just darker than expected. My hope with the next step is the weathering powder will make the track pop from the ballast. The weathering powder I use is from Bragdon Weathering System. It came in light, medium, and dark rust, with soot being the darkest color. With no specific ratio, I took soot and a bit of dark rust and mixed them together. I use another soft bristle brush, dap on a little bit of powder, and start lightly brushing it over the surface of the rails on the track. Brushing on weathering powder is pretty low stakes, meaning no precise brushing, just work in the powder until you get your preferred look. I switched to a slightly smaller brush to keep the powder a bit more concentrated right around the rails. The powder mixture ended up pulling slightly more red than intended, but as intended, it really made the track pop from the ballast. The smaller brush actually ended up becoming the better brush, giving a better subtle effect of weathered track. The more reddish powder looked more correct for a weathered, busy mainline. Just like ballasting and gluing, weathering your track does take time. Maybe this step isn't necessary or viable if your layout is a basement empire. However, for my layout, it's an obtainable look, and I plan on weathering my track on the inside of my layout when the time comes. This step is necessary to me because it's just another way to be immersed in a layout. So to close out the first video of this series, this is how I ballast and weather my track. I took my time and I was patient with it, and I got the results I was after. I did mention in the intro some people rush through their ballast they think it's boring or tedious. I personally choose to treat my track as a model because, as I stated, it makes the trains really pop as they travel over it. So stay tuned for parts 2 and 3, where I cover how to use tile grout as dirt and then how to apply static grass successfully. I think there's unique materials and layering methods used to really make my scenery come to life, and I just wanted to share it with you all. So, as always, I will see you all in the next video.